a platform for partnering and collaborating with NGOs. We've been able to improve service delivery and democratic dividends.
The event witnessed the induction of National Youth Service Corps members who had undergone training in the integrity and leadership workshop.
Having a mentor doesn't mean you have to follow your mentor into darkness. So if your mentor is actually moving in the wrong way, you can divert from that. And so the training was a good one.
Dignitaries at the event included Oparachi Jacob of African Poverty Alleviation Initiative, Dominic Ogaku, President Civil Society Group for Good Governance, and Daniel Omofowam, Executive Director, African Electoral Integrity Initiative. In Abuja, Nasiru Usman for Signature TV.
That's the news. When we return, we'll start our conversations and we'll be taking you to Anambra State. After all, we've started to hear the clock tick, telling us that November 8th is so close. Stay with us.
Every second, every minute, every day, news is breaking, events occur, and there are new developments. At Signature TV, we follow these stories objectively, bringing all sides without bias, explaining the complex issues, breaking down the numbers, and investigating the issues behind the news. Anywhere and everywhere, near or far, wherever the news is, we will be there. Signature TV. News in your pocket.
Just recently, there was this conversation that held in Anambra where the big issue was voter apathy. And many reasons were adduced why incidents of voter apathy persist in the Nigerian electoral system. Let me just give you a little statistics, not deep enough, but a little to give you an idea. The election that brought the present governor in Anambra State to power had 2.4 million voters registered in Anambra State. But are you wondering how many people did vote?
I'm hearing you.
240 something thousand people, and that shows that the figure was about 10.27% of total registered voters in Anambra State. There is no other way to talk about voter apathy except when you look at the statistics. It is glaring. We're headed for another election on November 8th, and the issue concerning voter apathy has not been resolved. Or has it? Well, fortunately for us, last week, the keynote speaker for that event is with us today, and he is someone you are used to on this platform. Southeast News is none other than Dr. Dennis Ekemeze. Dennis, good afternoon and welcome to Southeast News.
Good afternoon.
Dennis, you were opportune to be the keynote speaker, which means you are loaded with why we have voter apathy. And the case in Anambra State is not an isolated case. It's almost everywhere in Nigeria. Even last presidential election showed that the percentage, when compared to the total number of voters, registered voters in the country, was nothing to write home about. But we're looking at Anambra in particular because the election is just on November 8th, which is just about a week plus. What were the key issues that were thrown up during that conversation?
Well, thank you. That seminar or conference you talked about centered on youth mobilization for active participation in the electoral process. Because if you look at Nigerian politics and they released the voters registration, you see that the youth currently have an enormous number and therefore have overwhelming power to have a say in the electoral process. Importantly, you know that not you young to run also promoted youth engagement in the political and the electoral process. Furthermore, there is also an indication that the Gen Zs, of course, you know what happened in Madagascar and some other, what is going on in what we call the other geopolitical zonal arrangements in all over West Africa. That the youth are now clamoring that how will they be the leaders of tomorrow? Where tomorrow will not come for them. But they want to start now. And analytically also, you see that in most cases, if you analyze engagement of deputy governors candidates in Anambra State, you see that about 70% of them are youth, young ones. So invariably, we are targeting that with proper mobilization of the youth, they will now beef up the political process. Of course, you know, I've monitored the election since 1989 to date. Part of what disenchantment the youth have is that they are not involved, they are not engaged, and even when the election is come and gone, they will not also be given better positions. And it makes them to feel alienated. And that's why during elections, you see some of them playing football, staying in the beer parlor, or staying in their houses, with the conclusion that let them do whatever they want to do. But I don't think it's going to be like that. If you were able to see the registration that has been concluded, of course, I don't know whether you are aware that Anambra has about 2.8 registered voters for this election.
Well,
so the inclusiveness the youth are demanding, but also part of what we discuss is not only the youth, but how do we engage the women? How do we engage the women folk? And then what would be the role of disabled, physical challenged people? So these are some of the issues that we are raised, that we are tackled, and we believe that of course, you know, election is just about 9 days. From what I'm seeing, most political parties, candidates, what they're doing now is make campaign, person to person, which we call self model of mobilization, self model of election campaign. So I think that is where what it has boiled down to, that person to person campaign. And as I earlier noted, that the youth were given better position this time in terms of participation. However, most of them are engaged as deputy governorship candidates. I think that's the summary of the situation on the ground, or prelude to what we are going to discuss.
I want to agree with you that it's like a prelude to what we are going to discuss. But there is one takeaway that struck me. The fact that from 1989, when you've been covering elections and being part of the process of seeing that it is transparent, it is integrity-based, you discover that elections in Nigeria, the part that has never been lacking is the campaigns aspect. You will see massive campaigns. You will see people thronged to campaign grounds. If you take a closer look, you would even discover that Barikumo is in a campaign ground for Party A, is also in a campaign ground for Party B, is also in a campaign ground for Party C. But when it comes to election proper, I will opt to stay at home and tell the stories of, okay, I'm not sure that we have enough security to secure the voters on that election day. So these are some of the issues. Now, the conference, how did we profile solutions to some of these issues?
Well, let's do the political mapping or political analysis of it by let us first view it from the point of view of a structure, and then what do you call it? As stakeholders. You know, that is our popular
yes,
concept.
Yes.
Yeah, when you come to stakeholders, of course, when you talk of stakeholders, it involves the citizenry, especially those that have attained the age of 18 and above.
Yeah.
And narrow it down, those people who have registered in terms of who have the voting rights, who now exercise their franchise. And that's part of what, I don't know, part of what the new political candidates, what they are doing, that they must see a voter's card before engaging you in whatever they want to engage you, so that they will know that they are going to vote. Then also, part of that stakeholders dovetailed into structure owners. And you remember what I said earlier, that most of them are now involved as deputy governors or governorship candidates for Anambra. I think there's about 6 major political parties are contesting. Mm-hmm. So that they also, having been integrated, and then remember the other time we talked of inclusiveness, yes, having been involved, that they now be used as a part of those who are going to mobilize. Of course, you will know that some of them also will be those part of them that are going to be party agents. I hope you know that.
Yeah, of course.
And some of them also, apart from those people, coppers, there are some of them also who are also being engaged as the electoral personnel. I hope you know that. So by that time, you will see that already some of them are already engaged. And then very few remaining will be also part of the local observers. Of course, they have been trained from last week up to maybe to next week. Bringing it down, then you see that truly, for me, intelligence report, they are now being actively engaged, either as stakeholders or structure holders, or even part of the electoral umpire as ad hoc staff. So the remnants, very few of them that may be able to vote will be less than what will be expected. And that is what we must also note, that it is engagement of some of them in the various areas as part of the electoral umpire, and then part of stakeholders, party agents, and then part of them as candidates. Then we look at how many of them now who have that opportunity to go and play football.
Okay, let's like test the water a bit. You said we have the current figures of those registered.
Yeah.
Over 2 million.
2.8, I think, yeah.
No, I just want to say over 2 million. Now,
okay.
Are you telling me that those that will be engaged as party agents, ad hoc staff, and all that will be close to 2 million? So we are testing the water now.
The percentage of we're talking in terms of the percentage of youths that we are registered.
Yes.
Because we know that their turnout at that time will be about 45% that registered. If part of that of 45%, you engage some of them in what we have discussed as party agents, as electoral part of the electoral umpire, ad hoc staff, and then also some of them engage as what do you call it? Candidates, either deputy or the others. So you see that there may not be more than 20% of them that will come out to vote.
No, but the thing is this. The ones engaged as deputy governor candidates will still vote on election day. That's why I said we are testing the water.
Some of them may not even, situation. Of course, do you recall what happened in during the what do you call it, the senatorial by-election? That some of them left their constituencies and went to other areas to be what do you call it, to be observers, or turned themselves even monitors. Of course, there is a difference between an observer and a monitor. Which is a related problem in one of the communities there.
Yeah.
So we will not take it wholly that all of them will be involved in the casting their votes.
But Dennis, what does the Constitution say when you leave where you are duly registered to vote, the polling booth, and go to another place? What does the law say?
Of course, you know that it's against the Electoral Act. But the question is, again, I will ask you.
You remember what I said? We are going to test the water.
Are laws being enforced? Are electoral laws being enforced? Have they been prosecuted, those that were caught? Of course, you know, we see come to vote buying, and then we see how many of them that were caught in vote buying, how many of them have been prosecuted. The question is the law being implemented?
That is a good question. Now, if the law is not being implemented, what is the CSO doing? CSOs, what are they doing to ensure that INEC would begin to join forces with the Nigerian police force to ensure that the laws are being implemented? The truth is this: while we're testing this water, you'll discover that on election day, although the hierarchy of the police will say that no policeman should escort a politician to the polling booth, you see them hanging around, and nobody would arrest them. That's one. We're still testing the waters. Two, you said during the engagement they would ask for the voter's card before there is an engagement, so that it creates an opportunity to really say, okay, this man is going to vote, so we need to engage him to tell him why he needs to cast his vote on election day. But isn't that not another ground for vote buying, setting the stage?
Well, there are many dimensions of vote buying. Of course, I read it somewhere. Somebody even told me that made me to do that research. Vote buying has been a long issues involved in the electoral process.
I agree with you.
The only thing is that it's not highlighted as it is now. Of course, let's also go back to our earlier theory of mercantile politics. Because that is where we situated the political elites as political entrepreneurs and political merchants. We did that.
We did.
Our foundation.
We did.
And that is what is the dovetailing. Of course, part of the engagement the other time we did was in my keynote address, I told them plainly that they say their vote will not count. But the question was, why would they come to buy your vote if your vote is not counted? I think it's a big question also.
It is.
If your vote is not accounting, why would they buy it? And when they buy it, it counts. Is it not true?
It is.
It's now time for you to know how to utilize your vote so that for the benefit of you in future. However, you know that in most cases, the upper echelon or the political class are not so much engaged in governance. They only engage in political and then political maneuvering and to gain power and then utilize power, as we earlier said, for their own benefit, for their own selfish and aggrandizement. So part of what we need to, the society need to do, is not only civil society, the media also, as we are now doing, is part of the civic engagement, part of the mobilization process, and part of what we do, conscientization process also. I think also that the National Orientation Agency also spoke on that issue of vote buy, that people need to be careful. Because once your vote is bought, it means that you have mortgaged your conscience, you have already mortgaged your future, and the future of your children. So people need to properly be enlightened in such situation. However, It's the duty of the police, of course, you know. It's the police that have the power to arrest and then prosecute. So it's not civil society. Civil society can only enlighten you and advocate for free and fair, better election, and then for a violence-free election, and the enforcement. If you see, even if when you see somebody selling the vote and they draw the attention of the police will tell you, well, our hands are tied.
Who tied the hands?
Who ties them is the conscience and maybe the conscience and the prevailing circumstances. Of course, you know how many of them will be in the polling booth that day. Although in Anambra they say that they have mobilized about 45,000
policemen.
Electoral process have been militarized.
And not only that, police alone 45,000. NSCDC is mobilizing 10,000.
And then, of course, you know, both internal and external security. Although I had somebody saying that the internal securities vigilantes will not be used.
Yes, however, no, they have been banned.
You touched it slightly. That some of them, even if they say that you will not move the police, they will move. If they treated the vehicles and then bulletproof cars, how do you think dictator how many of them die inside? And that is the problem. The elites have already promoted themselves to the very high level of some of them being outlawed, that they command what goes on in the society. I think that's the basic problem we have. So it appears now that there's a rule or a law between the poor and the rich. The rich will offend the law, but they will not be prosecuted, and then the poor will offend the law, and then
they will be prosecuted. So
that's the scenario on the ground.
So what do we do at this point to turn the table around in such a way that we can begin to re-energize, so to speak, the average voter to know that on election day, it's imperative they participate so that their votes will not just count, but would show what the future would be for them?
Well, the better thing, one of it is to de-emphasize the issue of smoke infrastructure, as we earlier discussed. Of course, you know that hard economic situation in the society equally promotes smoke infrastructure, and then bargaining by the political elites and then party candidates in using their wealth, their money, their influence and affluence to engage the voters. And in some of the cases, some of them may not have the moral to refuse or to resist such a gesture. Of course, in some cases, if you have some of us that monitor, observe the election, if you are not careful also, you will be tempted to dance to their tune. However, seasoned ones among us will now disassociate ourselves from them. In some cases also, I've seen when somebody after voting will raise up his ballot paper.
For the world to see.
The police will just overlook it, and then it doesn't concern him until if you approach him, you say, go and report. To whom will you report? The electoral officer? Of course, you know, at times water will pass under the bridge, and then you know what it means. So let's continue to conscientize the people. As I said earlier, it's part of the historical development, it's part of the historical process that will take time to be pulled out. Of course, remember what I told you earlier, what Professor told me as a young student when I asked him, when will corruption stop in Nigeria? He told me plainly that when corruption will stop is when corruption corrupts corruption. Corruption will stop. So let us see, we can see when the vote buying will be at its optimum, so that people will now know how much we pay, how much can we afford, and then they will now start to trend down. Particularly, those in authority will try to maintain good governance. When they do good governance, people will now be able to look onto them, that they will be able to give them a better lease of life and better package and better welfare. So I think that is the rule is between myself as a member of civil society, you as a media, and then also other stakeholders. The religious institution also to come to such a engagement, because it's part of the morality and moral question that we need to answer for telling our voice as the rights as the citizens of our nation, in nation building, and let me use that word. So it belongs to all of us. So nobody will escape it. Let us not apportion blame that the police will do that. And the civil society is a collective responsibility for all of us to engage in such.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Dr. Dennis Ekemezie, for coming on to Southeast News. We'll continue this conversation well into on election day and beyond it, because we need to change the narrative. You cannot have over 3 million voters prepared, set for an election, and on election day probably you're having just about 10% of voters turning out. So it's our responsibility to get the voters onto the field to take that decision that will make their future bright. Thank you again, Dennis. It's been my pleasure.
Yes, there's something I'm missing. As much as INEC was able to extend the date for time for period for collection of voters, also they should also make more rooms, because for now I don't think many people have collected their voters card after registration.
Okay, well, November 2 is still not too far, but it's not today. At least they still have about some hours left, about 36, 48 thereabout.
Okay.
All right, then. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you. As we move on, we're still in Enugu. We went to Anambra to have a conversation with Dr. Dennis Ekemezie on voter apathy. But right now, we're taking you somewhere that's very close here in Enugu. Just join me in going on a short break. When we return, you'll find out where in Enugu.
Thank you.
Signature TV. News in your pocket.
If you listen attentively, you'll notice that you hear a lot of voices, some noise at the background. Well, that's where we are. We are with our E-Vibes presenter, Queenette Nwokonta. Queenette, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, sir.
You've been staying away from me. Where are you actually?
Okay, we're live at Anambra Stadium in Enugu State. The Association of Movie Practitioners and Producers are here for a novelty match with Rangers International Club here in the stadium, and it's quite intense here, because it's about, I think, 5 to 10 minutes ago that the Rangers gave the African Magic Movie Practitioners 2-0. So I think they just scored another one.
I like that.
This is 3-0, like right now. It's 3-0 right now.
So Queenette,
Yes, sir.
what is this novelty match all about?
Okay, so they want to bring together community, not just sport. They want to bring together entertainment, fun, community relationship, and I think more of a relationship. It's more of a relationship other than just a match.
So, in a stadium where you are, give us an idea of the type of people around there, and if they are also having fun, the way you had fun when you said they just scored a third goal.
Okay, so there's so many movie actors and actresses, producers. The current president of the AMP is right here. The vice president is here. Some of the Nollywood actors are there on the field playing the football. There's a whole lot of people, and some citizens are also here to be part of the football match and see who, at the end of the day, be the winner.
All right. Well, I want to believe that we'll be getting more information about the novelty match during a major news at 6 p.m. Thank you very much, Queenette Mokonta, for coming on to Scientist News. Pleasure is mine. And that is the show for today. We'll be back tomorrow. Barikumo Ado is my name. Thank you very much.